Have you ever noticed how a single ray of sunlight can transform an entire room? How it can turn ordinary dust motes into dancing galaxies, make shadows retreat, and fill even the smallest space with an undeniable sense of life? That same magnificent force lives within you, an inner sun that holds the power to illuminate not just your own life, but the lives of everyone around you. This isn't just poetic metaphor. Think about those rare individuals who seem to radiate vitality from within, whose very presence makes you feel more alive, more real. Their laughter carries the warmth of summer, their ideas spark like daybreak, and their creativity flows as naturally as light itself. What you're witnessing isn't just personality or talent, it's their inner sun burning bright and true, unobstructed by doubt or fear. We're all born with this extraordinary capacity for radiance. Watch any young child at play, and you'll see it. That pure, unfiltered creative force that turns cardboard boxes into spaceships and puddles into oceans. It's the power that transforms ordinary moments into adventures, challenges into opportunities, and simple materials into works of art. This is your birthright, not just to exist, but to shine. But here's what's fascinating about this inner light. It expresses itself through distinct patterns, what ancient Vedic wisdom traditions called the sun's avastas. These aren't just temporary states or passing moods. They're more like the fundamental rhythms of your creative fire, the deep patterns that determine not just how brightly you shine, but how you interact with life's greatest gift, the power to create, to inspire, to bring warmth and vitality to everything you touch. Think of these patterns like the different ways sunlight plays through a forest. Sometimes it streams through the canopy in brilliant shafts, turning everything it touches to gold. Other times, it's filtered and diffuse, creating subtle plays of light and shadow, and sometimes it seems to disappear entirely, though its power remains undiminished behind the clouds. Understanding these patterns is about so much more than self-knowledge. It's about unlocking your capacity to live fully, to create freely, to love deeply, and to contribute your unique light to the world. Because here's the truth that might change everything for you. Your inner sun never loses its power. Even when it seems dim or distant, even when life's challenges cast their longest shadows, that divine creative force remains within you, waiting to be fully expressed. Every journey of light begins with its first challenge, the moment when our radiance meets resistance. As natural as it is to shine, it's equally natural to encounter forces that seem to dim our light. This is where our deeper journey begins, in the profound dance between our creative fire and Saturn's shadow. For it is Saturn, the great teacher of form and limitation, who first asks us, how will you shine when the world seems designed to dim your light? Let's begin our exploration with perhaps the most fascinating pattern, when our inner sun seems to go into eclipse. Imagine having a star inside you, magnificent and powerful, but something keeps blocking its light from fully reaching your life. This isn't just about feeling uncreative or unmotivated, it's about a deeper mystery. How can something as powerful as our creative essence become obscured? And more importantly, what spectacular transformations become possible when we understand this pattern and begin to clear the path for our light to shine through? What happens when the most powerful force in our solar system, the blazing, life-giving sun, meets the profound depths of Saturn's shadow? This cosmic dance between light and limitation creates one of the most fascinating patterns in human consciousness, one that challenges us to discover just how brightly we can shine even when life seems determined to dim our light. Imagine for a moment the most brilliant diamond you've ever seen. Its fire comes not just from its clarity, but from the precise way it's been cut, each facet created through careful limitation. In the same way, when Saturn's influence meets our inner sun, it presents us with a profound choice. Will these limitations become the very facets that make our light shine more brilliantly, or will they become the walls that contain it? The digital age has given this pattern new ways to express itself. We might find ourselves constantly documenting our lives on social media, not from genuine creative expression, but from a deep uncertainty about whether we exist if our light isn't being reflected back to us by others. Or we might hide behind our screens, offering brilliant insights anonymously while feeling unable to claim our wisdom in the full light of day. Yet hidden within this very pattern lies an extraordinary invitation. When we understand that Saturn's apparent starvation of our light is actually an initiation, a cosmic invitation to discover just how powerful our inner sun really is, everything begins to shift. We start to recognize that our limitations aren't prison walls, but focusing lenses, not designed to contain our light, but to help us discover its true power. This is where the magic begins to unfold. Because once we understand this pattern, we can start working with it consciously. Instead of fighting against limitation or trying to escape it, we can learn to use it as artists use shadow to make light more visible, as composers use silence to make music more powerful, as storytellers use tension to make triumph more meaningful. Consider what happens when a mountain stream meets a narrow gorge. The water doesn't disappear or lose its essential nature. Instead, it becomes more focused, more powerful, often carving paths through solid rock. This is the hidden gift in Saturn's dance with our inner sun. When understood, our limitations can become the very channels through which our light flows most powerfully. Take Maya Angelou, who transformed the profound limitations of trauma and silence into words that would illuminate millions of lives. Or Stephen Hawking, whose physical constraints became the crucible for some of our most brilliant insights into the nature of the universe. These aren't just success stories. They're examples of people who learned to work with this pattern consciously, turning Saturn's apparent starvation into a lens that focused their light into unprecedented brilliance. Imagine a child, eyes bright with excitement, bursting to share their latest creation, only to be met with words that turn their enthusiasm to ash. Who do you think you are? Don't show off. Stay in your place. This is where we begin to understand one of the most profound patterns in human consciousness. When Saturn doesn't just dim our light, but makes us feel fundamentally wrong for shining at all. The digital age has given this pattern new arenas to play out. We might find ourselves endlessly editing that post, rewriting that comment, second-guessing that share, not from a place of thoughtful refinement, but from deep anxiety about being seen. Our creative impulses get buried under layers of filters, both literal and metaphorical, as we try to make our light acceptable before letting it shine. Yet within this very pattern lies an extraordinary secret. The shame that seems to suppress our light actually points to its power. Think about it. We don't shame what's insignificant. The very fact that our light attracted such strong attempts to contain it speaks to its inherent strength. Like a seed pushing through concrete, our creative essence is so powerful that it took active suppression to contain it. The transformation of this pattern begins with a radical act of reframing. What if every experience that made us feel wrong for shining was actually an initiation, a cosmic invitation to discover just how unshakable our light really is? What if shame wasn't a signal to dim our light, but a challenge to learn to shine despite resistance? Again, remember how diamonds are formed. Under immense pressure, carbon doesn't become weaker, it becomes unbreakable. Similarly, when we learn to shine through shame rather than cave to it, our creative expression gains a remarkable quality of resilience. We develop what we might call unshakable radiance. Not because we never feel shame, but because we've learned that our light is stronger than any force that tries to diminish it. What's fascinating is how this shift affects not just our creativity, but our entire relationship with visibility. Those who've worked through this pattern often become powerful advocates for others' light. Having faced down shame about their own radiance, they develop an extraordinary capacity to create safe spaces where others can shine. Their hard-won freedom becomes a beacon that helps others navigate their own journey from shame to authentic expression. Even our relationship with criticism transforms. When we no longer carry shame about our fundamental right to shine, external feedback becomes what it was always meant to be: information to help us refine our expression, not ammunition for self-doubt. We can listen without collapsing, learn without feeling demolished, and grow without losing our center. This is where Saturn's deeper teaching reveals itself. All along, those experiences of shame weren't meant to extinguish our light, but to help us discover its inextinguishable nature. Every attempt to make us feel wrong for shining has actually been strengthening our connection to our creative essence, teaching us that true light can't be diminished by external judgment. When we've wrestled with Saturn's shadows long enough, something curious often happens. We begin looking for our light in the world around us. It's a natural movement, like a plant turning toward the sun after a long darkness. Yet this seeking carries its own subtle challenge. For as we move from Saturn's direct opposition to Venus's seductive reflections, we encounter a new question. How do we recognize our own light amid the dazzling mirrors of the world? What happens when our inner sun encounters not the stark shadows of Saturn, but the gleaming mirrors of Venus? This is perhaps one of the most subtle and seductive patterns in human consciousness, when we become so hypnotized by the reflection of light that we forget we are its source. Think of walking through a hall of mirrors. Each surface catches and reflects light beautifully, creating an enchanting display. But in this shimmer and sparkle, something curious happens. We become so captivated by the reflections that we lose sight of the original light that makes them possible. This is the essence of what occurs when Venus starves our inner sun. The digital age has given this pattern new ways to express itself. Social media becomes a vast hall of mirrors where we endlessly scroll through others' creativity, gathering inspiration but rarely making the leap to original expression. We might curate beautiful feeds, share profound quotes, celebrate others' achievements, all while our own creative fire waits quietly within, longing to spark something new into being. Yet hidden within this very pattern lies an extraordinary invitation. Those very qualities that make us such excellent appreciators of beauty, our sensitivity, our ability to recognize and resonate with light, are actually signs of our own inner radiance. Just as the moon's ability to reflect light so perfectly speaks to its deep relationship with the sun, our capacity to recognize and reflect beauty points to the creative power waiting to be awakened within us. Think about what happens when you finally turn away from a mirror and face the sun directly. There's often a moment of adjustment, even discomfort, as your eyes adapt to the direct light. This is similar to the transition that happens when we begin to shift from seeking external inspiration to trusting our inner creative source. It might feel uncomfortable at first, even a bit blinding, but this discomfort is actually a sign of awakening. The transformation of this pattern begins with a profound recognition. All the beauty we've been seeking outside ourselves has actually been calling us home to our own creative essence. Like a person who's spent years studying maps finally realizing they're standing on the very treasure they've been seeking, we discover that our ability to recognize light speaks to the light we carry within. Even our relationship with inspiration itself transforms. Rather than waiting to be inspired by external sources, we discover that inspiration flows naturally from within when we make space for it. Those moments of creative blockage become not crises of dependency, but invitations to go deeper into our own creative wellspring. This is where Venus's true gift reveals itself. All along, her mirrors weren't meant to trap us, but to teach us about the nature of light itself. Every reflection we've gathered, every beauty we've absorbed, has been preparing us to recognize and trust our own creative essence. The very sensitivity that made us such good appreciators of others' light becomes the foundation for expressing our own. The journey from seeking external validation to harsh self-judgment can be remarkably subtle. As Venus's mirrors show us countless reflections of possibility, Mars's perfectionism often awakens, asking, if such beauty is possible, why can't we achieve it perfectly? This is how we move from the seduction of reflection to the rigidity of self-criticism. A shift from seeking our light in others to demanding impossible standards from ourselves. What happens when the warrior planet Mars turns its fierce energy not against our enemies, but against our own light? This is perhaps one of the most dynamic patterns in human consciousness, when our drive for perfection becomes so intense that it actually blocks our creative flow, like a flame burning so hot it consumes itself. Picture a master craftsperson so consumed with making their work flawless that they never feel ready to share it with the world. Or a performer who's trained for decades but still doesn't feel prepared enough to take the stage. This isn't just perfectionism. It's what happens when Mars, the planet of action and excellence, turns its warrior spirit against our solar creativity instead of protecting it. The digital age has given this pattern new ways to express itself. We might find ourselves spending hours perfecting a social media post that should take minutes, or endlessly tweaking our website instead of creating new work. Our drive for excellence becomes a form of procrastination, a way to stay busy while avoiding the vulnerability of genuine creative risk. Yet within this pattern lies an extraordinary opportunity for transformation, because Mars isn't actually meant to shame our light, it's meant to protect and champion it. When we understand this, we can begin to redirect that powerful martial energy from criticism to support, from perfectionism to protection of our creative essence. Think about how a master martial artist trains. Yes, they practice forms repeatedly, seeking excellence, but not for perfection's sake. They practice so that when the moment of action comes, their body can move freely, instinctively, without the hesitation of self-doubt. This is how we begin to work with Mars's energy differently, not to achieve perfection, but to develop the confidence to express ourselves freely. What's remarkable is how this transformation affects our relationship with excellence itself. Instead of seeing perfection as a prerequisite for sharing our work, we begin to understand that mastery comes through expression, not endless preparation. We learn that every imperfect creation we share strengthens our creative muscles more than 100 perfect pieces kept hidden away. Even our relationship with criticism transforms. When Mars's energy is properly aligned, it helps us distinguish between useful feedback and unhelpful perfectionism. We develop what we might call warrior's wisdom, the ability to fight for our creative vision while remaining open to genuine opportunities for growth. This is where Mars's deeper teaching reveals itself. All that perfectionist energy wasn't meant to make our work flawless. It was meant to make us brave. Every moment spent refining our skills wasn't actually about achieving perfection, but about building the confidence to share our light with the world. What becomes possible when we turn this warrior energy toward protecting and championing our creative fire? This is the pattern of Mars delighting the sun. When our drive and determination become perfectly aligned with our creative essence, creating a force of unstoppable manifestation. Imagine a master swordsman whose discipline isn't about violence, but about the perfect expression of their art. Each movement precise, each action purposeful, their practice becomes a form of living poetry. This is what happens when Mars delights the sun. Our warrior energy becomes not just focused power, but an art form in itself, directed toward manifesting our creative vision in the world. You might recognize this pattern in those rare individuals who combine fierce dedication with joyful expression, athletes who make their sport look like dance, entrepreneurs who turn competition into collaboration, artists who transform struggle into beauty. They've learned to use Mars's warrior spirit not as a weapon, but as a tool for creation, like a sculptor's chisel that reveals the beauty hidden within the stone. In daily life, this pattern manifests as a remarkable kind of focused grace. These individuals move through obstacles not by forcing their way through, but with a kind of inspired precision, as if their very challenges are part of their creative medium. Whether they're building a business, creating art, or leading teams, there's a sense of disciplined inspiration in everything they do. The professional sphere transforms under this pattern too. Instead of using power to dominate or compete, these individuals channel their martial energy into protection and empowerment. They become guardians of creativity, both their own and others. They might build organizations that shelter innovation, create spaces where others feel safe to take creative risks, or champion causes that protect artistic freedom. What's fascinating is how this pattern affects our relationship with conflict itself. Those experiencing Mars's delight of the sun don't avoid challenges. They transform them into opportunities for creative expression. Every obstacle becomes not a barrier, but a chance to demonstrate the artistry of skilled navigation, the poetry of purposeful action. This is where the deepest wisdom of Mars's delight reveals itself. Power isn't meant to perfect us, but to protect us as we create. Like a warrior who uses their strength not for conquest, but for protection, we learn to channel our martial energy into guarding the sacred space where creativity flourishes. Yet, within this very crucible of perfectionism lies the seed of authentic confidence. For when we've faced our harshest inner critic long enough, we begin to understand something profound. Our light doesn't need to be perfect to be powerful. This realization marks the transition from Mars's endless striving to the natural dignity of the proud sun, not through conquering our doubts, but through embracing our essential radiance despite them. What becomes possible when our inner sun steps fully into its power, undiminished by doubt and unafraid of its own radiance? This is the pattern of the proud sun, not pride in the sense of ego or arrogance, but the profound dignity of a light that knows itself and shines without apology. Think of those who seem to glow from within, not with the desperate brightness of someone seeking attention, but with the steady radiance of natural confidence. Even in difficult circumstances, their light doesn't dim. If anything, challenges seem to make them shine more brightly, like stars that become more visible in the deepest night. While others might anxiously track their likes and shares, those with a proud sun use social platforms as genuine extensions of their creative expression, neither seeking validation nor fearing judgment. Their online presence radiates the same authentic light as their physical one, steady, purposeful, naturally inspiring. Yet perhaps the most remarkable aspect of this pattern is how it affects others. A proud sun doesn't diminish the light around it. Instead, it seems to kindle something in everyone it touches, as if its very presence reminds others of their own inner radiance. These individuals become natural catalysts for growth, not through preaching or pushing, but simply by demonstrating what becomes possible when we fully own our light. Even their relationship with adversity transforms. Challenges that might once have threatened to extinguish their light become opportunities to shine more brightly. They develop what we might call creative resilience, the ability to transform obstacles into opportunities and limitations into launching pads for innovation. This is where the deeper wisdom of the proud sun reveals itself. All along, the goal wasn't to become impervious to darkness, but to discover that our light is naturally resilient, capable of shining through any circumstance, not because it's invulnerable, but because it's real. Every challenge we face becomes not a threat to our light, but an opportunity to discover its unshakable nature. Standing fully in our power opens us to an unexpected truth. True strength creates space for softness. As we settle into the confidence of our natural radiance, we discover that our light doesn't need to be solely bright and burning. Like the sun reflecting on water, our creativity can dance with the fluid wisdom of emotion. This is how we move from the proud sun to the moon's delight, through recognizing that power and vulnerability aren't opposites, but partners in the dance of authentic expression. So what happens when our emotional nature becomes not just a mirror for our creativity, but an active partner in its expression? This is the pattern of the moon delighting the sun, when our capacity to feel and respond becomes perfectly aligned with our creative essence, creating a harmony that enhances both. Imagine a lake at dawn. As the sun rises, the water doesn't just passively reflect its light, it dances with it, adding its own fluid grace to the sun's radiance. This is what occurs within us when the moon delights the sun, too. Our emotional nature becomes like that dancing water, not just receiving our creative light, but adding its own wisdom and beauty to its expression. You might recognize this pattern in artists who create their most powerful work, not despite their emotional sensitivity, but because of it. Think of musicians like Nina Simone, whose deep feelings became the very vehicle for her artistic expression. Or writers like Virginia Woolf, who dove into the depths of human emotion to illuminate universal truths. These aren't just examples of emotional expression, but of emotion becoming a sophisticated instrument of creativity itself. In business and leadership, this pattern manifests as emotional intelligence raised to an art form. Consider leaders who navigate complex organizational changes not by suppressing emotions, but by skillfully working with them, both their own and others. They're like conductors who don't just direct the music but feel it flowing through them, using that sensitivity to bring out the best in every player. While many use social media as a mask, those experiencing Moon's delight of the sun create spaces of authentic emotional resonance. Their posts, videos, or artwork carry that rare quality of being both personally vulnerable and universally touching, like a poem that speaks your own heart's truth. What's fascinating is how this pattern affects our relationship with time. Like the moon moving through its phases, we learn to honor both periods of bright expression and quieter times of emotional processing. We discover that these rhythms aren't opposing forces, but part of the same creative cycle. The moon's wisdom teaching us when to shine brightly and when to reflect deeply. Instead of fighting against periods of low energy or difficult emotions, we learn to read them like a sailor reads the tides. A period of sadness might become the perfect time for editing or refinement. Anger might fuel powerful revisions. Joy might open us to new possibilities we couldn't see before. Each emotional state becomes a different lens through which our creativity can focus and refract. In relationships, this pattern creates a remarkable kind of presence. Those experiencing the moon's delight of the sun don't need to choose between being creative and being connected. They've discovered how each enriches the other. Their relationships become gardens where both parties grow, nourished by shared emotional wisdom and creative exchange. You might see this in therapeutic relationships where both healer and client are transformed, or in mentoring relationships that grow into lifelong creative partnerships. The professional sphere transforms under this pattern too. Instead of the common split between productivity and sensitivity, these individuals bring both to their work. They might lead teams with both vision and empathy, create products that are both innovative and nurturing, or build businesses that serve both practical needs and emotional well-being. Think of companies that have transformed entire industries, not through aggression, but through deep attention to human emotional needs. This is where the deeper teaching of this pattern emerges. Our emotional nature was never meant to be overcome or managed, but to be integrated into our creative expression. Like the moon's gravitational pull creating the tides, our feelings can move us into deeper waters of creativity if we learn to work with rather than against them. As this pattern matures, it creates what we might call emotional artistry, the ability to create not just from inspiration, but from the full spectrum of human feeling. Our work becomes richer, more nuanced, more deeply resonant, because it carries both the clarity of sunlight and the depth of moonlight. We learn that our emotional nature isn't a liability to be controlled, but a sophisticated instrument to be played with skill and sensitivity. When we've learned to trust the wisdom of our emotions, something remarkable happens to our relationship with wisdom itself. The very understanding that once seemed purely intellectual begins to transform, like moonlight rippling across water and reaching toward the stars. And this is where our emotional intelligence starts opening us to Jupiter's expansive vision, showing us how personal feeling connects to universal truth. This is how the moon's wisdom prepares us for Jupiter's greater understanding, by teaching us that our deepest feelings aren't just personal experiences, but doorways to collective consciousness, bridges between individual creativity and universal meaning. Imagine a master teacher whose very presence awakens others' potential, or a wise leader whose decisions seem to benefit not just individuals but entire communities. This is what occurs when Jupiter delights the sun. Our creativity becomes naturally aligned with wisdom, turning everything we create into an opportunity for collective growth and elevation. You might recognize this pattern in those remarkable individuals who seem to make everyone around them better, not through conscious effort, but through the natural radiance of their being. Their achievements don't just serve their own success, but somehow expand the possibilities for all. Whether they're educators, entrepreneurs, artists, or spiritual leaders, there's a quality of benevolent light in everything they do. What makes this pattern particularly beautiful is how it transforms our relationship with purpose itself. Instead of struggling between personal achievement and collective good, we discover they're naturally aligned. Our creative expression becomes like a sun that warms everything it touches, naturally stimulating growth and illuminating potential in others. In daily life, this pattern manifests as a kind of effortless wisdom. These people don't need to choose between being successful and being good. They've discovered how true creativity naturally serves both. Every project they undertake, every innovation they introduce, seems to create ripples of positive change, expanding far beyond their original intention. Yet perhaps the most remarkable aspect of this pattern is how it affects our relationship with joy. We discover that true creativity isn't just about expression or achievement. It's about participating in the universe's own delight in creation. our work becomes not just personally fulfilling, but universally beneficial. This highest harmony between wisdom and creativity reveals itself first in our fundamental relationship with purpose. Those experiencing Jupiter's delight of the sun don't need to search for their calling. They've discovered that their natural creative expression is their calling. Their work becomes what the ancient texts called dharma, that perfect intersection of personal gift and universal need. What's even more fascinating is how this pattern affects our relationship with abundance itself. Those experiencing Jupiter's delight of the sun discover that true prosperity isn't just about gathering, but about flow. The more freely they share their gifts, the more abundantly resources seem to appear exactly when needed. Like the sun itself, they generate light and warmth naturally, without fear of depletion. This is where the deepest wisdom of this pattern reveals itself. Our creativity was never meant to be just personal. It's meant to be a channel through which universal wisdom can express itself in new forms. Every act of creation becomes an opportunity for grace to enter the world, for understanding to deepen, for collective consciousness to expand. As we close our exploration of these solar patterns, remember, these aren't just abstract possibilities, they're living potentials within each of us. Whether we're currently experiencing Saturn's shadow, Venus's reflection, Mars's warrior spirit, or Jupiter's wisdom, our inner sun remains undimmed. Each challenge, each pattern, each phase of our journey is part of learning to shine more fully, more wisely, more beneficially. The question isn't whether we have light to share. It's whether we're ready to participate fully in this grand dance of consciousness, allowing our creativity to become part of the universe's own journey of self-discovery and expression. For in the end, each of us is both the light and the mirror, both the creator and the creation, both the individual spark and part of that greater sun that illuminates all of existence. Understanding these cosmic patterns is only the beginning. Like any form of light, this knowledge seeks to illuminate not just our minds, but our lived experience. As we prepare to translate these celestial insights into earthly practice, remember, each pattern we've explored represents not just a planetary influence, but a potential already living within you, waiting to be awakened through conscious engagement and practice. Yet understanding these patterns individually reveals only part of the story. Like the planets themselves, these creative energies don't exist in isolation. They dance together in an intricate cosmic choreography, each pattern potentially enhancing or tempering another in ways that can transform our creative expression. Just as planets in the sky form aspects with each other, creating harmonies and tensions that shape our experience, these solar patterns don't exist in isolation. They dance together, each one potentially enhancing or balancing another in ways that can transform our creative expression. When Jupiter's wisdom meets Saturn's limitations, something remarkable occurs. Instead of seeing obstacles as pure restriction, Jupiter's expansive vision helps us recognize them as cosmic focusing tools. A deadline becomes not just pressure, but a channel for concentrated creativity. Limited resources spark innovation rather than frustration. This combination teaches us that boundaries aren't barriers, but the very conditions that make meaningful creation possible. The moon's emotional intelligence brings particularly powerful medicine to Mars's perfectionism. When we learn to honor our feelings while pursuing excellence, we discover a more organic kind of mastery. The moon teaches Mars that creativity flows in cycles, that there are times to push and times to rest, times to refine and times to release. This partnership helps transform rigid perfectionism into fluid expertise. Venus and Jupiter can create an especially potent alliance when approached consciously. Venus's refined appreciation for beauty, when combined with Jupiter's expansive wisdom, might help us recognize beauty not just in obvious places, but in the grand patterns of existence itself. This combination can enable us to create work that is both aesthetically refined and deeply meaningful, both beautiful and wise. Mars's warrior spirit becomes particularly powerful when protecting Moon's sensitivity. Instead of seeing emotional sensitivity as weakness, this combination recognizes it as a precious gift worth defending. The warrior becomes a guardian of the heart's wisdom, creating safe spaces for deep feeling and authentic expression. Saturn's gift for focus, when combined with Venus's aesthetic sense, creates an extraordinary capacity for refinement. This isn't about harsh criticism, but about loving attention to detail, like a master jeweler carefully faceting a precious stone. Together, they can teach us that limitation and beauty aren't opposites, but partners in the creation of lasting value. The proud sun, when aligned with any of these patterns, amplifies their beneficial aspects. With Jupiter, it can create magnetic teachers and leaders who inspire by example. With Moon, it has the potential to enable emotional wisdom that doesn't lose its center. With Mars, it might forge unstoppable creative force tempered by dignity. With Venus, it will generate authentic beauty that radiates from within. With Saturn, it builds enduring structures that serve creativity rather than confine it. Perhaps most fascinating are the three-way dances: Jupiter's wisdom guiding Mars's protection of Moon's sensitivity, Venus's beauty inspiring Saturn's structure to serve Jupiter's expansion, Moon's fluidity helping proud Sun navigate Saturn's boundaries. These combinations can create rich, nuanced approaches to creative expression that can meet any circumstance with grace. Understanding these interactions gives us a more sophisticated toolkit for working with our creative energy. Like a master musician who knows when to play loud or soft, fast or slow, we can learn to call upon different combinations of these patterns as needed. Sometimes we need Saturn's focus with Mars's discipline to complete a project. Other times we need Moon's sensitivity with Jupiter's wisdom to serve others effectively. The key lies not in trying to manifest all patterns perfectly at once, but in learning to recognize which combinations would best be manifested in each situation. This is the art of creative mastery, not rigid control, but fluid adaptation, calling forth the exact qualities needed for each moment of our journey. Most importantly, remembering how these patterns can interact to their highest vibration reminds us that we're never truly stuck. If one approach isn't working, we can always call upon another pattern to help transform the situation. Feeling trapped by Saturn? Invite in Jupiter's perspective. Overwhelmed by Moon's emotions? Call on Mars's protective strength. Lost in Venus's mirrors? Let Saturn help you focus on your own unique light. This interweaving of patterns reflects the ultimate truth about creativity itself. It's not a single formula, but a living dance, a constant interplay of energies and approaches that keep our expression fresh, authentic, and evolutionarily alive. With this deeper understanding of how these patterns can work together, let's explore how to consciously cultivate these qualities in our daily lives. These solar patterns, whether challenged by Saturn, reflected by Venus, strengthened by Mars, or expanded by Jupiter, aren't fixed destinies. They're potentials we can consciously develop through practice and intention. Just as a musician can learn to play multiple instruments, we can learn to work skillfully with each of these cosmic energies. Let's explore how to work with these cosmic patterns in your daily creative practice, transforming abstract understanding into concrete action. When working with Saturn's constraints, begin by establishing clear boundaries around your creative time. Rather than seeing this as limitation, make it your first ally. For instance, dedicating exactly 30 minutes each morning to your craft. Choose one limiting factor in your creative work, whether it's time, space, or materials, and deliberately use it as a creative prompt. The magic of Saturn's teaching lies in documentation. Keep a journal where you track how each constraint leads to innovation. When criticism comes your way, don't shy away. Instead, extract one specific learning point to focus on. Transform every "I can't because" into "this limitation helps me by." Through this practice, you'll begin to see boundaries not as walls, but as focusing lenses for your creative light. Venus's mirrors require a different approach. One key is to create before you consume. Start each day by making something, anything, before opening social media or engaging with others' work. Keep a notebook dedicated solely to original ideas, making it a practice to write down 3 new thoughts before reading other perspectives. For every piece of work that inspires you, create your own response, not as imitation, but as dialogue. Establish what we might call original hours, sacred times when you work purely from your own creative wellspring. When you find yourself admiring others' work, practice the "what if I" technique. Deliberately change one key aspect to make it your own. Mars's perfectionism transforms through structured release. Implement what we call the imperfect timer. Give yourself 25 minutes and share whatever emerges, ready or not. Practice deliberate imperfection by intentionally releasing work with minor flaws, reminding yourself that impact often matters more than perfection. Create clear criteria for what constitutes good enough in different types of work. After 3 iterations of any piece, challenge yourself to share it regardless of how ready it feels. Schedule regular imperfect hours, where quantity takes precedence over quality, training yourself to value production over perfection. Working with Moon's emotions requires deep listening and fluid response. Begin creative sessions with what we might call an emotional weather report, a moment to acknowledge and honor your current feeling state. Develop an emotional palette, matching different feelings to colors, shapes, or sounds in your work. Practice emotional alchemy by deliberately channeling difficult feelings into creative fuel. Keep track of how different emotional states affect your work, not to judge, but to understand your creative rhythms. Develop specific practices for different emotional states, like gentle flow work for melancholy days or bold experimentation for times of joy. Mars's protective energy can be channeled consciously for creative benefit. Start by creating a clear manifesto of what your creative practice stands for and what it needs to thrive. Develop a protective pause practice, a moment of centered strength before engaging with criticism or challenges. Create a specific ritual that helps you enter your creative space with both power and purpose. Think of this energy as both shield and sword, knowing what to defend and what to fight for in your creative journey. Jupiter's expansive wisdom flourishes through conscious sharing. Keep track of how your work impacts others, no matter how small those ripples might seem. Make teaching and sharing integral to your practice. Even one small insight shared daily can create meaningful impact. Look for ways your work connects to larger themes and universal experiences. Practice taking small ideas and deliberately growing them through what we might call expansion exercises. Most importantly, regularly align your creativity with service, asking how each piece might benefit others. Integration happens through conscious practice and attention. Consider creating a pattern calendar, dedicating different days or weeks to working primarily with different energies. Develop specific rituals that combine multiple patterns, perhaps using Saturn's focus with Mars's protection during challenging projects, or Venus's appreciation with Jupiter's expansion when seeking new direction. Keep track of how different combinations work for you, building a personal repertoire of effective practices. Remember to track your journey with these energies. Keep a simple journal noting when different patterns serve you well and what specific practices prove most effective. Review monthly which energies need more attention or development. Create your own feedback systems to measure how each pattern supports your growth. Most importantly, maintain flexibility in your approach. These energies are meant to flow and adapt as you evolve. This isn't about perfecting everything at once. Start with the pattern that most calls to you right now. Perhaps it's Saturn's discipline you need, or Venus's appreciation or Mars's protection. Begin there with one simple practice, and let your engagement with these energies grow organically over time. Remember, mastery comes not through rigid control, but through consistent, mindful engagement with these eternal creative forces. Remember, these aren't just planetary patterns, they're different facets of your own creative essence. Like a diamond catching light from various angles, each pattern reveals another aspect of your innate brilliance. The goal isn't to overcome your natural tendencies, but to expand your creative repertoire, learning to express your light in ever more nuanced and powerful ways. Your inner sun has infinite capacity for expression. By consciously engaging with these patterns, you're not just working with planetary energies, you're discovering the full spectrum of your own creative light. This isn't about changing who you are, it's about revealing more of who you've always been. May your light continue to grow in brightness, wisdom, and joy, illuminating not just your own path, but lighting the way for others to discover their own radiance. Thank you for watching. Please consider reaching out if you need help with any of these aspects. Maybe interacting with me is the thing that will change your experience and vision.